Good day, History 363. So today we're going to be talking about the Senate, perhaps the most influential of all of the various aspects and institutions in the Roman Republic. Now, one key thing when we think about the sort of different parts of the Republican body politic, we have the magistrates who are elected by the Roman people. We have the voting assemblies when the Roman people come together to elect magistrates, pass laws, and judge trials. Both of those groups, however, are very, very ephemeral. They're temporary. A magistrate only holds office for a year. Roman magistrates are expected to not hold office continuously. You don't run for Roman office year in and year out. Indeed, for the consulship, you either keep moving up, so there's the expectation that once you are aedile, then the next thing you'll run for will be praetor. And there's also the expectation that if you're a consul, you can run for censor. You can run for consul again, but you're not supposed to do so without 10 years intervening. This starts out as a norm, and then when some people violate that norm, it gets hardened into a law. So what that means is the magistrates are constantly cycling, both with the year and, of course, even if a few praetors and consuls have their imperium extended through prorogation, they lose those powers once they come back to Rome. And most prorogation is only for a year or two. So there's this constant churn of magistrates. The voting assemblies are truly ephemeral. They last only for the time that they are called together to vote, and then when they disband, that's over. There is no, again, standing parliament or Congress in session. So what that means is there's kind of a vacuum in terms of a permanent institution that can kind of anchor governance in the Republic, and that vacuum is filled by the Roman Senate. Now the term Senate, senatus, comes from the Latin word senes, or old men. So a Senate is literally a council of elders. That might be sort of the most literal translation. It in fact is a kind of a direct Latin counterpart to the Greek concept of a gerousia, likewise a council of elders. The Senate consists of, for most of the Republican period, roughly 300 former magistrates. So to be a senator, you have to hold elected office. And that actually is important. While you serve as a senator for life, you have to have won at least one election before the Roman people. And the, again, lowest office that qualifies, as we've discussed before, is quaestor. So you win election for quaestor, you serve your time as quaestor. The next time there's a census, the censors will then elect you into the Senate. Now again, technically, the censors control the entire roster of the Senate, so they can, in theory, if there's a quaestor who's proven himself a real scoundrel, they don't have to put him into the Senate. They can also kick people out of the Senate for serious misbehavior. That being said, outside of some kind of scandalous behavior, most ex-quaestors are brought into the Senate without controversy, and most people serve for life, again, during good behavior. So that is part of the permanence of the Senate is, men run for quaestor usually in their late 20s. And so, by 29 or 30, you could be brought into the Senate and then serve for 20, 30 years, even given the shorter lifespans that even elite Roman men experience. So the Senate, again, is always there. Technically, it is an advisory body. That is, the Romans don't assign formal powers to the Senate, in that its main goal is to advise the magistrates and also advise the Roman people. So the Senate may actually say, here is a policy that we think we should undertake. We'd like to recommend to the Roman people that they pass a law in this regard. So technically it's an advisory body. And indeed, a decree of the Senate is called a senatus consultum. The idea that it is simply the advice of the Senate rather than the Senate mandating something. That's in theory. In theory, it's an advisory body. In reality, the Senate accrues a number of de facto powers. And the main reason it accrues those de facto powers is precisely because the Senate is always there. There may be times there's no one else to make a decision, but the Senate's there, and their decree oftentimes becomes more of a decree. People sort of treat it as binding. So what are powers that the Senate de facto assumes? One is diplomacy. If you are an envoy and you want to come to Rome as a diplomat to talk to somebody, the consuls may be out of town. They may be out fighting somewhere, but the Senate is there. And so the place where envoys go is into the Roman Senate. So therefore, this gives the Senate a huge amount of influence over diplomacy, because there's just no one really there to give an answer to various diplomats who arrive. The Senate also assumes, again, de facto control over finance. And of course, in theory, they may be simply advising the quaestors how they're going to distribute the money, but oftentimes that advice is treated as binding. So it is the Senate that determines what rate of taxation, tributum, the Roman people will pay in order to finance the legions. And it's the Senate that decides how much money, say during the lustrum of the censors, how much money the censors can spend on public buildings. So again, technically maybe that's advisory, but de facto, the Senate is the body that does the appropriations, if we can use that word, and I'm using it anachronistically, in Rome, simply because there's no one else there to decide who gets to spend the money. Now, it is true that consuls, as they're leaving for their province, can take the money out of the treasury that is, to fill the anticipated needs of the war. Again, they know roughly how much a legion costs to keep in the field for a year. But once the consuls take what they think they're going to need and go, the Senate is the sort of most august body permanently present that can decide how money is going to move around. So again, another de facto power that the Senate assumes, again, in the kind of vacuum that exists in the Roman Republic. Now, the Senate meets it can actually meet in a variety of places. It has to meet in inaugurated space, that is a space that has been religiously determined to take auspices. Usually it meets in the curia, so we call the curia hostilia in the Roman Forum, so a large designated Senate house. Also important, there's not a lot of public spaces that are designated for public officers to do their business. There is actually no Roman equivalent of a White House where the consuls are always there. The censors do have a space. They have the Via Publica out on the Campus Martius. But the Senate House, again, is a case of a public building with a set purpose where you can go and usually expect to find senators who can listen and make decisions and give their advice. So the Senate House is in front also of the Comitium, one place where the Roman Tribal Assembly can meet. And again, it seems at times the Senate will give its advice. A voting assembly can be called by a relevant magistrate, and then the people can vote on that advice, frequently in a kind of rubber stamp fashion. And so therefore, the fact that the Comitium is right there in front of the Senate House sort of allows the Senate to influence a lot of routine voting on issues like, should we extend the imperium of so-and-so? The Senate decrees it. They might call a voting assembly that maybe, really hits the minimum number of people. If it's 5 per tribe, you only need 175 people to pass a plebiscite or a law. So it does seem that, again, the Senate kind of has the ability to subsequently feed into the kinds of voting decisions that the Roman people make. Although the Roman people there is oftentimes disagreement amongst the Senate, and that's where the Roman people have a little more agency. The Senate can meet in other places. They can really meet in any temple. So, for example, when the Senate meets to debate whether to recommend a declaration of war, it will go to the temple of Bellona, a Roman war goddess, and debate there. Although, again, a declaration of war subsequently has to be ratified up on the Campus Martius by the Comitia Centuriata. But again, the Senate's decision carries a lot of weight with Roman voters. Again, the Senate has de facto powers, partially because it's there, and also partially because of the extraordinary social prestige that is assigned to senators. And indeed, one key feature of the Roman Republic that gives it a real aristocratic flavor is the deference that common Romans show to the aristocratic political class. And of course, that deference is also a carefully and expensively and painstakingly developed construct. To be from a Roman family that has arrived is to be considered a noble, to be a nobilis. And collectively, there is a class, the class of Roman families are the nobiles. These are the sort of established families, and the criterion to being an established family is to be able to claim a consular ancestor. So if you, in your family, can claim a consular ancestor in your direct line, then you are a nobilis. You are a member of the nobiles. You are noble. And indeed, the etymology of the term nobilis comes from the concept of being known. And so therefore, to be noble is to be known. It actually has a concept that it's kind of similar to being a celebrity. And indeed, to be in a Roman aristocrat is to have a real public profile. Your family name is recognized, and then you yourself are recognized both through the association with the family name and the renown of both your deeds, your military deeds, and also your public presence in the city of Rome. To be a politician is to be known. It's to be a celebrity. And therefore, that's how you know that you are a nobilis. Now, the opposite of a noble is a novus homo, a new man, novus homo. That is someone who has, we'll get a couple of definitions, but the most strict definition of a novus homo is someone who has no senatorial ancestor. That means no one in your family has ever held office in Rome and has ever served in the Senate. And therefore, you don't have the fame that comes with having illustrious ancestors, particularly a consular ancestor. Now, one important thing is about the Roman political class, the class of senators, is on one hand, there is a very stable set of noble families. These include patrician families like the Cornelii Scipiones, but also plebeian families that arrive and never go away. For example, the Caecilii Metelli. So these are the families who routinely hold consulships, they just have a tremendous cultural and social luster. There are buildings that have been built by members of these families who served as censor. They are known. That being said, while there are a stable set of families, there's about 20 or so families that really dominate the consulship. But that said, there's also within the Roman senatorial aristocracy a churn. Because life is short, there are plenty of aristocratic families that simply either die off, they don't produce a male heir and that line ends, or are burdened by the economic pressure of maintaining a senatorial lifestyle, which is incredibly expensive. You have to live lavishly in a manner that's expected from a senator, and also just running for office costs a lot of money. including providing food and drink for the voters in your tribe to try to get them to come to Rome and support you. That's very, very expensive. And oftentimes families either get bankrupted by this or simply, gosh, it really wasn't worth it. When Dad made it to Queester, we're not going to try to push any sons in that direction because we're financially strained. That being said, to the movement from being a novus homo to being a nobilis is oftentimes a multi-generational project. It's very rare for a novus homo to achieve the consulship. It does happen. Cato the Elder, the famous novus homo who becomes consul. Cicero, a famous novus homo who becomes consul. Gaius Marius, the same, famous novus homo who becomes consul. But it's quite rare. A more common trajectory is for a novus homo to achieve a junior office or two, to be elected quaestor or aedile, and then stops. They just don't have either the social prestige or the financial resources to try to push up onto the higher offices, where there's a lot of fierce competition from people named Cornelius Scipio or Caecilius Metellus. But that quaestor or aedile, now the family's there. The son is now not a novus homo. His dad was in the Senate. Let's say the son runs for quaestor, aedile, and praetor, also kind of hits that glass ceiling. But then maybe the grandson runs, now that the family is more established, now that it may actually have some military accomplishments, and the grandson may then make it all the way quaestor, aedile, praetor, consul, and therefore ennobles the family. Now that family has joined the nobiles. Again, the Senate in many ways is the political wing of this sort of broader aristocracy. It does have extraordinary sort of real power. I mean, the theoretical power of the Senate is advisory, but because of the cultural prestige, the social prestige of the senators themselves, it has a lot of power both over the current magistrates. I mean, remember, if you're the consul and you're having a dispute with the Senate, which of course probably means you're having a dispute with the senior senators, most of whom are ex-consuls, there's at any given time probably about 20 ex-consuls in the Senate, and they are the senior people of the Senate. They speak before other people and have, of course, much more prestige as men who have obtained the consulship and have whatever military accomplishment they achieved during their time in office. And so if you're a consul, you're fighting with men who are ex-consuls, and guess what? You know that after you are done being consul, you have to go back and live with them in the Senate for the rest of your life. Which means, while there certainly are clashes between consuls who want it their way and the Senate, oftentimes the consul is going to simply respect people who, again, he has to live with as peers once he's done with his office. And likewise, as I've emphasized, the Roman people, well, yes, they technically hold sovereignty. Their vote is what passes laws. They tend to respect the authority and the advice of the Senate. There's, again, a huge deferential impulse within Roman votors. And therefore, if the Senate, who again can understand the kind of complex realities of policy, if they propose a law and then it's brought to a voting assembly, say by it has to be brought by a magistrate calling the voting assembly, the people tend to vote to approve. And that fact, the deference of the Roman people, the fact that magistrates were senators before they became magistrates and will be senators after they're magistrates, gives the Senate a lot of influence in the system. So when we think about Polybius in the chapter that you're reading, presents this kind of checks and balances vision of the Roman Republic, and I'm looking forward to in your responses your views on this checks and balances vision, which obviously to a degree we read in terms of sort of an American civics version of checks and balances. But it's important to note that those checks and balances may not be as robust as Polybius would like us to think. And if anything, the Senate has much more informal power, probably, than the formal powers assigned to the magistrates or the formal powers assigned to the Roman voting assemblies. All right, that's all for now. Hopefully, I may wait till this weekend, but I will be dropping a video on the Roman army, and that will be kind of part of our transition as we start moving on in the coming weeks to thinking about Rome's conquest of the Mediterranean. So we'll see you soon.